Hello, sports fans. It's me, Sportsman Z, Bob Zolke, and today I'm going to be playing a Strat-O-Matic game, card and dice version. It's going to be the '68 Washington Senators. I always have a tendency to want to call them the National versus the '68 Chicago White Sox. Now, both teams were terrible. The Senators were 65 and 96 and in dead last, and the Chicago White Sox were tied for seventh, one spot ahead of them, maybe one spot ahead of them, at 67 and 95, tied for seventh place. So they're both bad teams. Today's game is going to be the elementary version of the game with the elementary rules, because it's been quite a while since I've played a card and dice version of the game, and really, I kind of like the elementary version. I always have. I've been partial to that. Plus, I'm not using stadium effects. I'm not using anything like that. So we're just going to go with the elementary version, and it's going to be on the mound for the teams. It's going to be Joe Coleman for Washington versus Tommy John for the White Sox. Now here's the lineup for the Washington Nationals. There you can see the scorecard. I'll just run down the lineup really quickly. You can look at it. It's Stroud, Unser, Mullen, Frank Howard, Mike Epstein, Bernie Allen, Tim Cullen, I think, Paul Casanova, and then Coleman. And the pitchers will be hitting because this is 1968 and this was before the DH. And so here the White Sox lineup, and you can see this. It's going to be Aparicio, Tommy Davis, Tim McGraw, Pete Ward, Wagner, Ken Berry, Dwayne Josephson, Ron Hansen, and then Tommy John. And so let's get started. It's been a while since I've actually scored them. I'm going to try to score them the way that the score sheet says here, the way you would do it at the ballpark, go down one inning, write down, the little symbols and everything, and we'll see how successful I am at actually doing that well. But anyway, Washington's up first, and that means Ed Stroud. I'm using big dice and my big board so that you can see everything a little better, or at least hopefully you can see everything a little better. Ed Stroud, and he gets a 6-7 on Tommy John. That's a third base X. The third baseman is a 4, and we roll the 20-sided dice. And we've got a 7 and 4 at third base, which is a one base error. So we have Stroud getting on by error. E5. And let's see, mark that down for him. Pete Ward making an error. And then Del Unser comes up. 6-10 on Tommy John is a center field X. God, he can't catch a break. He's got 2 X's in a row. But the center fielder is Ken Berry, and he's pretty good. He's a 2 in center. And that's a 20. 20 and 2 is an out 5. Runner on third scores, but others hold. So that was a fly out to 8. And now Ken McMullen is up. And he gets a 1-7, and that's a pop out to shortstop. So pop out to 6. And let's bring this back here. And then Frank Howard, Big Frank, and he gets a 1-7, which is a fly ball left field B. So he flies out to 7. And Washington gets nothing in the first. which brings up Luis Aparicio to lead off the bottom of the first. And he gets a 1-8, which is a pop out to short. Tommy Davis gets a 6-3 on Coleman. That's a ground ball, first base C. So ground ball 2-3, and then Tommy McGraw, and he gets a 5-4, which is a catcher's card X. And we can see that Casanova is a 3, and that's a 2. 2 and 3 on catcher is an out on dribbler, so he is out. So we'll say that that's 2-3, and no runs for Chicago in the first, and so that brings up Epstein in the second. And he gets a 5-11 on Tommy John, first base X. Those X's are coming up crazy. And Tommy McGraw is a 3, and that's a 15. That looks like it's going to be something bad. Yeah, it's a one base error by Tommy McGraw. So Epstein gets on by an E4 or E3. And Tommy McGraw makes an error. And that brings up Bernie Allen. He gets a 2-6, which is a single. So let's see, that's a single, and that puts McGraw or Epstein on second. John gives up a hit. And now we've got 2 runners on, no outs. And Tim Cullen up, and they're going to sacrifice with Cullen. And let's see, a sacrifice, you use what? You use the 2 dice. And he gets a 6, probably is going to advance the runners. Batter is thrown out with third baseman, runners advance 1. So Tim Cullen gets a sacrifice. That sends Allen to second and Epstein over to third, and now with 1 out. And Paul Casanova up, and he gets a 4-11, which is a ground ball pitcher B. So that's going to be an out at first with runners remaining where they are. So that's going to be a ground out 1-3. And now that brings up the pitcher, Joe Coleman, who is a 1 batter, and that's a 6-4, and a 6-4 is a third base X. And he's already made an error, and we got a 14 and 4 on the third baseman. Is that right? He is a 4, yeah. 14 and 4, that's a 1 base error. So he makes another error, and this one costs them. Joe Coleman gets on with an E5, and Epstein scores a run, and that's the second error for Ward, and it's going to be an unearned run for Tommy John. And then Stroud comes up, and he's got a 4-8, and on John's card, that's a strikeout. So there's a strikeout there, and the Senators go ahead 1-0. And now Pete Ward is up, and he really has to make up for quite a bit here. 1-3 is a walk. So he does manage to get a walk. And Coleman gives up a walk. Leon Wagner. Wagner gets a 4-3. And on Coleman, that's left field X, and the left fielder is a 5. That's Frank Howard. Well, that's not going to be good, and in fact, that's terrible because I don't have a 5 chart. So we're going to use the 4. We're going to use a 4 in place of the 5. And this is an 18. 18 and 4. In the outfield is select another. 8 and 4 is safe at third on error. So Frank Howard makes an error, and Ward scores. Wait a minute, what's going on here? Oh, okay, no. Yeah. All right, so, yeah, and Wagner is on third. And that was an E7. And now Ken Berry is up with a man at third and no outs. And that's a 6-6, which is a line out to first base. Line out to 3. And Josephson is up with 1 out. And that's a 2-9, and that's a ground ball shortstop A. And let's see, ground ball shortstop A. Batter is out at first. If no runners or force runners, hold. So he holds at first, and so Josephson was, what was that? 2-9. Ground ball shortstop. So that was 6-3. And now Ron Hansen is up, man at third, and we've got a 5-9, and that is a home run 1-12 for Ron Hansen. And he gets a double out of it, and that again will be an unearned run. Hansen with the double. And that scores Wagner. So the White Sox take a 2-1 lead. And that's a hit given up by Coleman, but again, no earned run. And now Tommy John is up with a runner at second, and he gets a 1-9, and that's a walk because he is a 6 hitter. So he draws the walk, and now there are runners at first and second with 2 outs, and Luis Aparicio up. And that's a 1-8, and that's a pop out to short. So Chicago strikes for 2 there, both unearned. And that brings up, in the top of the third, that brings up Del Unser. And he gets 5-5, and that's going to be a home run 1-6 or a fly ball. And that is a 6, so Del Unser gets a home run. And that's a hit given up by John and an earned run. And Washington has tied the game. McMullen is up, and he gets a 4-9, and that's a single 1-14. And that is a single. So that's another hit. And that brings up Frank Howard. And he gets a 1-4, which is a ground ball third base A. So that he hits into a double play. So that's a 6-4-3 double play. And so now there's 2 out. And Mike Epstein up. And he gets a 6-8. And that is a line out to second base. So line out to 4. Another thing I wanted to point out is that I am using, but they tied the score there, Washington did. I'm using mainly guys, since I'm only doing one game, I'm using mainly guys who were full year players. I'm tried not to, use like guys with 86 at bats, 107 at bats. Obviously, if you're playing a season, you're eventually going to need to start guys like that, but this is just one game, so it's mainly starters. Tommy Davis is up, and he gets a 6-8 on Coleman, and that's a double 1-7. And that will be a double for Tommy Davis. And let me go get the dice. So that's a hit given up by Coleman. And then McGraw, 4-10 on Coleman, is a shortstop. The shortstop is Cullen, and he's a 3. And that's a 20-3 at short. And that's going to be a select another. And that's a 2-3. That's going to be good. That is a single 2. So that drives in a run. So Tom McGraw with a single and an RBI. And another hit given up by Coleman. Pete Ward is up, and that is a 5-7, and that'll be a fly ball center field B. So that is a fly out to 8 for the first out with a man at first. Leon Wagner is up, 4-7, and that is a second base X. And the second baseman, I believe, is a 2, and that's a 12. Let's see here. Let's check both of those things. Second base 2, and that's a 12. So 12 and 2 is an out double play. So Leon Wagner hits into a 6-4-3 double play, and that ends the inning. And Chicago struck again. They got another run, so now it is 3-2 Chicago with Bernie Allen up. And he gets a 1-6. That's a ground ball first base A. So ground out to 4. Oh wait, put it here. Ground out to 4. Tim Cullen with a 4-2, and that's going to be a fly ball center field B. Fly out to 8. And then Paul Casanova. And he gets a 5-4, and that's a catcher's card. That's Josephson. Josephson is a 4. That's a 15-4. And that's going to be a single. So Casanova gets on with a single. And that's going to be a hit again against Tommy John. And then the pitcher is up, and he hits a 5-4, which is another catcher's card. And that's an 8 and a 4. And 8 and 4 is a safe at first on drop pop-up. So then Josephson makes an error. All right. So Joe Coleman gets a single. He goes to second. And there's an error on Josephson. This White Sox defense was not very good. And then Ed Stroud gets a 4-4, and that's a fly ball center field C. So he flies out for the final out to center field. I believe, yes. But did they tie the score? No, they didn't tie. So, no runs there in the fourth. Chicago is up. And they bring up Ken Berry. 5-4. That's going to be a catcher's card. And their catcher is Casanova, who's a 3. That's an 11 and a 3. 11 and 3 is a foul out. So, Ken Berry's out. Foul out to 2. Dwayne Josephson's up. He's got a 4-4. That's a third base X. Their third baseman, oh, that's going to be a hit. Their third baseman is a 3, McMullen, and a 3 and a what did I roll? A 1 and a 3. That's a single. So a single for Josephson. Oh, okay, hold on. Foul out 2, and then a single for Josephson. And that's a hit given up by Coleman. Hansen's up, and that's a 1-4. That's going to be a ground ball shortstop A, so he hits into a double play. 6-4-3. And then Tommy John is up. And he gets a 4-6, which is a strikeout. And that'll be Coleman's first strikeout of the day. And no runs for the White Sox, which brings up the Senators in the 5th. And that'll be Del Unser to lead off in the 5th. And he gets a 4-7, which is a walk. So Del Unser on with a walk. And a walk for Tommy John, first of the game. McMullen, he gets a 6-9, and that is a shortstop, and that's Aparicio, who's a 2, and that's a 6-2. Could be a double play there, and it is. So McMullen hits into a 6-4-3, and there are now 2 outs with nobody on, and Frank Howard, and he gets a 3-4, which is a strikeout. And that is Tommy John's second strikeout, and they get no runs in the 5th, and now Chicago is up with Aparicio, 3-11. That's a single. So Aparicio on with a single in the bottom of the 5th. And another hit given up by Coleman. Tommy Davis is up, 6-9. That's going to be a ground ball shortstop, and their shortstop is Cullen, who's a 3, and that's a 6-3. And that's an out 1, so that moves the runner to second. Tommy Davis gets a fielder's choice, which moves Aparicio to second. And then Tommy McGraw, and he gets a 2-5, which is a strikeout. And that's Coleman's second strikeout of the day, with the runner at second getting knocked over by the dice. And then Pete Ward gets a 3-5, and that's a walk. So Pete Ward with the walk still keeps runners at no runners advance, obviously, on that. And so you got Coleman with another walk, and there's 2 runners on and 2 out, and Wagner up, and he gets a 3-8, which is a strikeout. And that's another strikeout for Coleman, and no runs for the White Sox. And now we go to the top of the 6th, and we have Epstein up. Still a very good game, 3-2 White Sox. Epstein with a 6-6, and that's going to be a single. So Epstein gets a single to lead off the 6th. And that's another hit given up by John. Bernie Allen, 5-5. Home run 1-6 for Bernie Allen. And no, that's going to be a fly ball. So that is a fly ball to right field. So that's a fly out 9. 1 out. Tim Cullen gets a 4-5, which is a ground ball second base C. So that's a fielder's choice. Runner goes to second, but there is now 2 out. And that brings up Paul Casanova, and he gets a 1-3, which is a strikeout plus injury. So Casanova strikes out to end the inning, and he gets the strikeout, and then we roll the dice to see how 12, that's going to be at least the balance of the game, I would think. Yeah, this game plus 3. So Casanova has to be replaced in the Washington lineup by the backup catcher, which will be Jim French, and he'll go in at the same spot that Casanova was in. And so now you've got Jim French at catcher, and he is a catcher 4. And we're going to lead off with, let's see. Oh, yeah, okay, so they got no runs in the 6th. And so now it's Ken Berry up. And he gets a 5-12 on Coleman, which is a fly ball center field. And then Dwayne Josephson's up, and that's a 5-8. And that is a 1-1-3 or a single on Coleman. And that's going to be a single. So Dwayne Josephson with a single. And another hit allowed by Coleman. Brings up Ron Hansen, who gets a 2-7, which is a single 1-2. And no, it is not, just barely it is not. And it's line out to third base for Hansen. Line out to 5. So 1 out. No, 2 outs and a man at first. And Tommy John gets a 1-6, which is a ground ball second base. So he is out. Ground out to 4-3. So the White Sox get no runs there. We go to the top of the 7th. The Senators are going to pinch hit for Coleman. And they are going to pinch hit I don't know how, always butcher this guy's name, but Brent Alialia is going to pinch hit. Alia, I don't know. But we'll put him into pinch hit against Tommy John. And he gets a 1-3, which is a ground ball shortstop, so he's out, and he goes back to the bench. Ground ball to the shortstop. Ground out 6-3. Okay, and then we're going to have to pick another pitcher who will be Darrell Knowles will come in. Coleman pitched 6. Right, he pitched 6, yeah. He gave up no earned runs because, or wait, 1 earned run. I think it was 1 earned run. So yeah, Knowles will be into pitch. And then Ed Stroud comes up with 1 out in the 7th, 6-6, and that is a single. So Stroud with the single. And another hit given up by John. Del Unser gets a 1-4, which is a ground ball shortstop B, which is a fielder's choice. Shortstop, so 6-3. And then Ken McMullen. And he gets a 4-6, which is a fly ball left field B. Fly out to 7. No runs there. With the White Sox coming up in the 7th, Luis Aparicio, 3-5. He strikes out. Strikeout for Knowles. Tommy Davis is up, 5-8. That's a shortstop. Their shortstop is a 3. That's an 11. 11 and 3 is an out. So Tommy Davis is out 6-3. And then Tommy McGraw. And he gets a 4-6, which is a double 1-9. Or, yeah, double 1-9, and that is a double for Tommy McGraw. And a hit allowed for Knowles. And now Pete Ward, and he gets a 2-4, which is a walk. So Pete Ward with the walk, a walk for given up by Knowles. And that brings up Leon Wagner, who gets a 2-4, and that's a fly ball, right field B. So he's out 9, and that is 2. That's the third out of the inning, and the White Sox get nothing in the 7th. We go to the top of the 8th. We are going to relieve John, so he pitched 7, and we're going to bring in let's see, who we're going to bring in. We're going to bring in Hoyt Wilhelm. To pitch. And he'll be pitching to Big Frank Howard. Wait, did he make the last out? No, he didn't. All right, Frank Howard to lead off the 8th. This might be their last big chance to tie the game. 4-7 on Wilhelm is a single. So there's a single for him and a hit allowed by Wilhelm. And that brings up Mike Epstein, who has a 6-6, which is a fly ball left field B. So Epstein flies out to 7. No runners advance. 1 out. And that brings up a 4-9, which is a strikeout for Bernie Allen. And a strikeout for Hoyt Wilhelm on his record. And with 2 outs now, that brings up Tim Cullen. And Tim Cullen gets a 6-8, and that's a pop out to second. So that's going to be a pop out to 4, and that is it for the Senators in the 8th. And that brings up Ken Berry to face Knowles, who's still in. And that's a 6-7, which is a second base X. And their second baseman, I believe, is a 2. Let's see, yes, Bernie Allen is a 2, and that's a 5. So that's going to be an out. Ken Berry is out with a 4-3. Dwayne Josephson has a 2-3, and that's a pop out to third, so that is a pop out to 5. And then Ron Hansen with a 2-7, single 1-2, or a line out to third. And that's going to be a line out to third. Line out 5. And that's none for them in the 8th. And now we go to the top of the 9th, and the Senators need a run here very badly. Jim French will hit because I think he's their only other catcher. And he gets a 2-6, which is a single. So Jim French in the 9th gets a single. And a single allowed by Wilhelm. And they're going to pinch hit for Knowles. And the pinch hitter will be let's see. Well, they got a lot of bad hitters over here. The pinch hitter will be Cap Peterson. So we put in Peterson to pinch hit. he gets a 3-5, which is a triple one or a single double asterisk. And he gets a single double asterisk. So runners are at first and third with a single, and Jim French advancing to third, Wilhelm allowing the hit. The infield is going to come in for Ed Stroud, and he gets a 3-10, which is a double one, single double asterisk, and that's a single double asterisk for Ed Stroud. So he knocks in a run, and now there's runners still at first and third, and Del Unser up, and the infield will stay in, and that's a 3-9, and that's a single. Now all of a sudden they're coming alive. Del Unser gets a single, knocks in Peterson, and that's a hit, and then 2 earned runs, and probably even, I don't know. Ken McMullen, infield still in, 6-4. That is a ground ball C. And let's see what happens with the ground ball C. Ground ball C, let's see. Out, runner at third holds, other runners advance. That's what I figured. So now it's second and third. McMullen was ground ball out, nobody advances, or the runner on first advances to second, but Frank Howard is up. They're going to walk Frank Howard, and then we're going to play the infield back at normal depth and hope for the double play. And that brings up Mike Epstein, who you would think would be a double play candidate, but he strikes out, which is almost as good, but not quite. Wilhelm strikes him out, and so now there's 2 outs with the bases loaded, and Bernie Allen up, and that's a 3-8, and that's a single double asterisk. So Bernie Allen rips a hit that probably just broke their back. Let's see, that guy scores, and that guy scores, and this guy is all the way over to third. And now we're going to bring in, what did he go? Wilhelm, 7. He went 1 2/3. Going to bring in another reliever, although now, and I think it's too late, but we're going to bring in Dennis Ryban. And he'll pitch to Tim Cullen. And he gets a 1-11, which is a ground ball, second base B. So that's the last out. 4-3. But they get 1, 2, 4. They get 4 runs right there in the 9th. So now the score is 6-3, and the White Sox will need 3 runs, and we're taking Knowles. Knowles has to be out because he was pinch hit for. So they will put in Bob Humphreys. And Knowles pitched 2. And we've got the pitcher coming up, so we're going to pinch hit for the pitcher. And we are going to pinch hit Bill Melton. In the 9th. No runners on. And he gets a 2-6, which is a double. So Bill Melton, he's leading us out, the pinch hitters. And that's a hit allowed by Humphreys. And now that brings up Aparicio. And Aparicio gets a 3-3, which is a walk. So the White Sox aren't going down very slowly here, or they're not going down very quickly. A walk by Humphreys, and then that brings up Tommy Davis, and he gets a 2-11, which is a pop out to third. So Tommy Davis, pop out to 5, that's 1 away. Tommy McGraw gets a 5-9, that's a fly ball B, so that won't advance anybody. Fly out to 8, that's 2 away. And Pete Ward gets a 4-5, which is a strikeout, and that's the game. With Humphreys striking out the last hitter, no runs there, and the Washington Senators win the game over the White Sox 6-3. Pretty good game there until the 9th. But anyway, hope you enjoyed that. This is the first card and dice game I've done in quite a while, and definitely for the channel. If you like that, we can do more of it. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Thumbs down if you didn't. I certainly didn't, because the White Sox lost. If you like that and you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel. Let your friends know, share it, tell people about it. But for right now, it's me, Sportsman Z, Bob Zolke, signing off.